Hi guys and welcome back to another video. So as you probably guessed by the title, today I'm going to talk a bit about female hormone health and talk about our cycle and hunger and how these are all linked in and how one affects the other. Before I get going, please like and subscribe. It really helps us and it helps me just to know what you like to see, if this is helpful, if it's beneficial. And yeah, we'll get going. So starting with the female cycle. So as you may or may not know, there's 4 different phases to your cycle and to your hormone cycle, starting with the first day of your period, and that is when your cycle begins. So this is the menstrual phase, and this typically lasts anywhere from sort of 2 maybe up to 8 days. This differs with different women and for various reasons. Your age can affect this, lots of different things can affect this, but there is a healthy range for your age and stuff. I do highly recommend tracking your cycle for this reason. I use an app called Clue. It's free, but there's lots of good ones out there, so just find one that works for you. I tried a few different ones that'll tell you like what's healthy for your age and your range. So yeah, typically it lasts, on average it's about 4 or 5 days. And then from there you go into the second phase, which is the follicular phase. So this is obviously just after your period, typically lasts about a week to 10 days-ish. Again, this totally depends on you as a person, your age, it's also like in your genetics and stuff, so it can vary from person to person, but typically around a week to 10 days. And then you go into the third phase. Oh, here I go again, I can't speak. The third phase. Bit of a tongue twister, which is the ovulation phase. So this is basically when the egg begins to release into the womb, and obviously that's when you'll be the most fertile. So if you want a baby, it's a good time to have sex, and if you don't, it's a good time to avoid it. Obviously there's a chance you can get pregnant at any point of your cycle, but that is when it's like peak. So a lot of people who are trying to have a baby will use ovulation sticks to find out when they're ovulating. And again, another reason why it's really important to track your cycle. It can be really helpful for stuff like that. And then from ovulation, that's typically just a few days, and there's a very small window for ovulation. And then you go into the final phase, which is the luteal phase, and lasts for about typically 10 to 14 days. And your hormones change a lot throughout this cycle. So when you are like menstruating, when you are bleeding, your hormone levels will drop and be at their lowest, and typically they'll be like this into the follicular phase as well, and then they will start to rise as you begin to ovulate, and then they'll be at the highest in the luteal phase. So this affects your mood, your energy levels, and it also affects your strength, it affects your hunger. There's lots of stuff going on. So one key thing that I always like to talk about and tell my clients about in the luteal phase, which is 10 to 14 days before your period, so after ovulating, in the build up to your period, you burn anywhere from 100 to 300 calories more per day. So if you find that your cravings are really bad before your period, this is why. It's because your body's using more energy up. So obviously your body's like craving most likely something sweet because it just wants like the sugar, wants the energy into your body. And this can become even more difficult when you are dieting, because you are already in that calorie deficit, you're already eating that little bit less. This makes the deficit even bigger and then can make it even more challenging. So something that I often recommend to my clients, that I do myself, either take my calories up to maintenance calories, technically would put you into a very small deficit, and that can help to manage cravings. Even if you just take your calories up by a couple of hundred, it can really just help to cover those cravings. Something as simple as like a piece of fruit or 2 pieces of fruit or just a small chocolate bar, it can just make all the difference. Even just mentally to know you're having that little bit more food, and that can help to cover that for that time frame. And then because you're managing that and you're thinking, right, okay, I'm going to increase it, rather than trying to resist it and then end up binging, going into a surplus, and then you've come out of the deficit, so that's going to prevent any results for fat loss if you continue to do this like all of the time. So it's better to control it up to maintenance, and this might make you progress a little bit slower, but it's better to do it slowly anyway, in my opinion. You don't want any quick fix, fast results. So yes, while it can make it a little bit slower, it's definitely more effective and just more manageable for your day-to-day life. Like, I know when I'm hungry, I am horrible. Like, I am not nice to be around, and if it gets to that hunger level, I am no. It's not good. So it's definitely, like, as I say, just like a lifestyle thing. To be able to manage it up to maintenance is definitely more effective than just trying to resist it, feeling really rubbish. Like, if you can resist it, like feeling rubbish, feeling low on energy, feeling angry, feeling just irritable because you're hungry and you're tired, or then the flip side of that, binging and end up going into a surplus, and then not just like the actual physical results of it, just the feeling that you then start to get, and you get into a bit of a binge restrict cycle. It can be quite bad for you mentally, and obviously your mental health, which is what you don't want. You don't want to get into that frame of mind where you're being really negative, like, I shouldn't have ate that, I shouldn't have done that, I'm going to restrict my calories, and just that negative self-talk. Even if you don't restrict your calories again after, it's like, oh, I'm weak, I'm pathetic. It's not. Like, it's your body, and it's your body telling you that it needs more food, because essentially you're using more energy inside of your body, because your body's releasing the egg and doing all of the fertility stuff inside of you, to put it simply. Whilst your body's doing that, you're burning a lot more calories, so your body needs the energy for that. So hopefully that makes sense for that. But that is one big thing that people don't realise, and like, as I say, they get into that really sort of negative self-talk frame of mind and just think they're weak and pathetic, when it's not to do with that. Like, yes, there is a discipline in fitness, but when it comes to female health, having this knowledge, it's not just about discipline, because our bodies are totally different to males, and we, like, as I say, we're burning more calories at different times of the month, and it's actually a lot harder for females to lose body fat. We hold on to it a lot more, especially around our sort of lower abdomen, hip area, because, sorry, this chair's really squeaky when I move. Around our lower abdomen, hip area, because we hold extra fat there to protect our reproductive organs, because as we've evolved, obviously we carry the children. So that's like why we struggle, and why a lot of women do have stubborn areas of fat there, and it's a lot harder for us to lose fat, which is very annoying. It's also harder for us to build muscle. Men build muscle 4 times faster than women, and that really annoys me. That annoys me so much. But that's because they have higher testosterone levels. So getting back to where I was at with the cycle chat, again, in the luteal phase, probably more so the second part of the luteal phase, when you're closer to your period, you're actually like the strongest, and that's because our hormones are at the highest, and our testosterone levels we don't have anywhere near as high as men, but we do have our highest testosterone levels at this point of our cycle. So that actually makes our strength like at its peak, and it's a really good time to really go for some PBs here and really push for those strength gains. Despite feeling stronger in this phase, this is probably the phase where everybody feels probably the worst. It's when you hold on to more water retention, so you're likely to be more bloated. The PMS starts to kick in, you feel really groggy. As I say, your hormones are peaking, so your body just feels a bit like that's what I feel like anyway. And that's like typical sort of symptoms around that time of the cycle. So whilst other things aren't so good, you can focus on your strength. You might feel a little bit weaker as you get like that little bit closer to your period, but it is a good time to focus on your strength. And then obviously, the first couple of days of your period, you'll still be feeling that sort of craving, bloating, obviously typical cramps and things like that, but that should hopefully lessen. I often find, like, after the first day or two of my period, I feel the best. I feel mint straight after. And then the time where you sort of bloating and things will be less is like the first 2 weeks after your period, so basically leading up to your ovulation, and before you hit the luteal phase. That is just typical. Again, that'll vary from person to person, but But as I say, that'll be where, like, you know, you don't really find that you have as many cravings and like your food's easier to manage. So I always say when people are starting to diet, it's best to start like straight after your period's finished or after the first few days, because this is when it's easiest to start it, easiest to manage it. Imagine if you're starting a diet when you're about to head into your period or head into the luteal phase. You are going to really struggle because you're going to be even more hungry, you're going to have those cravings. It's just not a good time to start. So it's definitely something to think about, all these little things that people don't think about. And then, you know, the start, for example, start a diet like just as they're heading into the luteal phase and the cravings are up and the cravings are high, and then the cave after a few days. And again, you get, as I mentioned there before, you get into that negative headspace and frame of mind and putting yourself down. You think you're weak, you think you're pathetic, and you think you can't stick to it and nothing's ever going to change. Whereas it's not just about that. Like, you know, like as I say, with a lot of my clients, I'm so passionate about this, I feel like I want to get all the words out, but a lot of my clients have said this, like, I wish I'd known this sooner, because if I'd have known this sooner, you know, like all those years I've like put myself down and just like tried to start dieting, and like, you know, on top of the fact that I'm restricting things that I don't even need to, etc, etc. If I'd known this about my hormones, about my cycle, it would have just been so much better. And that's why, like, knowledge really is power. Like, knowing this, like, and your cycle can be a superpower if you know how to work around it. And I mean, I could get into like certain foods you could eat at certain times of your cycle that can really benefit your cycle. I can do that in a separate video. Let us know below if that would be helpful. I would certainly be up for doing that, as it's a bit more in depth and I want to try and stick on track as best I can for what I'm talking about today. But yeah, there's like certain things you can do around your cycle that can really help and benefit, and it can be your superpower. So obviously, going back to dieting, there's two key hormones that you should know about that will be affected when you begin dieting. So they are called leptin and ghrelin. So leptin decreases your hunger levels, whereas ghrelin increases your hunger levels. I'm just checking I've got those the right way around. I've been wrong before. Yeah, so leptin decreases your hunger, ghrelin increases your hunger. So they actually work together, sending signals to the brain. So when you do go into a diet, obviously essentially dieting, a calorie deficit, is starving your body so that you lose body fat. Obviously, you know, I'd never recommend a deficit anything lower than 500 calories below your maintenance, as you don't want to go too low. But when you do go into this, as I say, your body goes into starvation mode, and that triggers the fight or flight response in your body, which sends your hormones a little bit out of sync and can then make your leptin levels rise. I'm just checking I got that right, yeah, because I always get this the wrong way around. No, your leptin levels go down and your ghrelin levels go up. I'm glad I checked that. Basically, it just makes you really, really hungry because your body's like, must find food, must find food. So it's definitely important to know about them. And then obviously, as I say, when you go into the luteal phase, that can trigger them to become even worse because you've gone into an even bigger deficit. So say, for example, you are at like the maximum, what I would personally use as a deficit of 500, which is like very, very, like that is the maximum, I think, you know, to make sure that your body's not like completely starving. Then if you're burning an extra 100 or 300 on top of that, that is a very large deficit for your body, and that is going to cause some intense cravings, and your hormones inside of your body are going to go haywire. And it is very important to look after your hormones, and mistakes that I've made myself in the past with dieting, you know, it has affected my periods. Like, my periods have been late because I've been in that much of a deficit. I've not been eating enough fats, and fats basically help with hormone production. So it's really important to be wary of the food that you put in your body and not going too low, that you're not gonna, you know, that you're going to affect your cycle, as that's not good, and that's when you can really, you know, come into some bigger problems. But if you're then like putting your body into that huge like even bigger deficit, as I say, it's going to just send your hormones crazy. PMS is going to be wild. And then, as I say, if it's delaying your periods, that's then going to, you know, I remember when it's happened to me a couple of times, it's been a few years ago now, and it felt like I was just having PMS symptoms for nearly 2 weeks. Like it was like I knew that my body needed to have a period for it to go, but it just wasn't coming, and that's because I delayed the ovulation. It wasn't even that big of a deficit, but because I didn't really manage my fat intake, as I say, and then manage my calories around like in the build up to my period in the luteal phase, I kind of did a little bit of, it's not lasting damage, I wouldn't say, but obviously I then affected the production of hormones. So it's really important to think about that, and that's why I say it's so important to track your cycle. You know, it just gives you insight into your body. I mean, just something as simple as like, if I know I've got a night out planned with my friends, and I'm like, right, I'm going to be due on then, I need to wear something loose because I'm going to be bloated. And I don't want to be going through that phase where, that place where, you know, I have an outfit that I really want to wear and it's like really fitted or whatever, and then I put it on and I feel like a sack of spuds. And I mean, that might happen anyway outside of the luteal phase. But if I know I'm going to be bloated, I'd rather find a nice outfit that I know is a little bit more loose fitting and I'm going to feel good and I'm going to feel comfortable in, and just go and enjoy my night and not get again into that negative self-talk. Like, your body really does hear what you think, because I think once you start with that negative self-talk, that's when you can get into some really dangerous sort of habits. So, you know, just something as simple as that, that might not be on everybody's agenda, but, you know, just anywhere you're going, like, you know, it does affect how you feel in certain clothes, and you want to feel good in what you're wearing and when you're out, and not necessarily be worried like, oh, do I look bloated? Do I look this? Do I look that? Like, you just want to go and have a good time and feel good. And I think when you feel good, that radiates out of you. As I say, tracking your cycle is really beneficial, just to know when you could maybe have a small increase in your calories. So you could increase up either a week or two before your period, just to maintenance. So you're not going to go into that surplus. It's still going to keep you in an overall fat loss phase throughout the month. Even if you want to do it for a week, if you find that your cravings are worse the week leading up, you might want to do it for a full 2 weeks. You could do half of the month in a small deficit and then the other half of the month at maintenance, and that would keep you on course for slow, steady fat loss. So tracking your cycle allows you to kind of know when, and obviously it's only a guide, it's not 100% accurate, but, you know, it just helps you to get more in tune with your body. And also, if you make sure that you're eating enough amount of protein per day, this is going to help you keep you fuller for longer in a fat loss phase, because protein has a high metabolic rate. So basically it's harder for your body to break down, so your body's using more energy, burning more calories to break down that protein. It, like, as I say, keeps you fuller for a lot longer, which when you've got less calories to play with is vital. As I've also mentioned, eating a sufficient amount of fats is key. They also keep you fuller for longer and help with hormone production. So keeping your hormones healthy and balanced is so important, particularly in a deficit, because your body's already in a little bit of a fight or flight mode. So it can send your hormones a little bit out of sync and out of whack. So making sure that you're getting enough fats can really help. And another thing that I often recommend, and that I personally take myself and I've found beneficial, is a vitamin B6 supplement, as that helps with hormone production. Also, going back to coming up to maintenance or increasing your calories slightly when you're in the luteal phase, even if you didn't want to increase up to maintenance, you could just increase your calories by 100 or 200, even just adding in something, as I say, like a piece of fruit or a couple of pieces of fruit, or a small chocolate bar. It's not going to take you like right up to maintenance and still keep you in a very small deficit. What I then would recommend is having refeeds or diet breaks, and it would be good to keep them in line with your luteal phase if possible. That's something that, again, that I do with my clients when we're ready for a diet break, and that I also do myself. A diet break I'll have in the week leading up to my period, so I've got more food. And just when you've been dieting, that, like, you know, extra few hundred calories feels amazing. So that's like 2 different options that you could do for that. And also, it's so important to manage sleep and stress. They both play a big part on any hormonal imbalances. Stress is a big one, and I've had this with one of my online clients recently, actually, and a couple of my friends, where they've been in stressful life situations. One of them was with work, one of them's been moving house. So if you've moved house, how stressful that is. And one of them's ended a long-term relationship. So these 3 things are just like general life things that have caused stress levels to rise, which is the cortisol hormone. So because that's like risen above a normal level, again, your body goes into fight or flight response because it doesn't know what's happening. And that affects your hunger levels, affects your hormones because it makes them imbalanced, because it's imbalanced because it's come up too high. And then because it's like your body goes into panic mode essentially, you possibly not ovulating at the normal time that you would. It like delays, your body basically delays your period because, you know, basically your body's like, oh, we're not ready to have a child because of the situation that we're in, if that makes sense. So it delays the period and it delays the release of the egg, which will then delay your period. And I mean, it's stress enough, you know, if your period doesn't bloody come, because the instant thought as a woman is like, I'm pregnant. So, you know, it's really important to manage stress. Really, really big one that people don't realise is it plays a really important factor. And obviously sleep and rest and recovery does help with stress management. I find like meditation, journaling, time off my phone really helps me, you know, again, be present, and helps to keep my stress levels as low as possible. So definitely don't neglect those, because they can again help, they can again affect your hormone levels. And as I say, if your hormone levels are all over, your body's in fight or flight, it's going to increase your hunger. And I'm sure a lot of you will agree, and I'm the same, when I'm stressed, I want to eat more because it makes your hunger levels increase. And same when I haven't had enough sleep. I know when I feel tired that I really have to keep my head in the zone if I'm dieting, because, you know, if I've had a bad night's sleep or whatever, I have to keep my head in the game, because otherwise I know like them hunger levels are going to creep in, especially like, you know, late afternoon, just gone 2 p.m. That's when they really, really hit. So really important anyway to have a good quality sleep routine. I always say like having a good wind down routine, which I've done videos on before, really helps with the quality of sleep you're getting, and aiming for anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a night. It's also important to note that too much sleep can affect you as well, but sometimes you do just need that big sleep every now and then. But I do find that it is better, rather than trying to play catch up and having a big long sleep, because that can make you feel groggy. It's better to have regular good quality sleep every night of the week if possible, or at least a good 60 to 80% of the time. So I'm going to finish my waffle here. I feel like I went right off on a tangent as always. I went a bit like this way, but hopefully it makes sense. Just as I say, I'm very passionate about this, about female health. I am predominantly a female coach. I have a couple of male clients, but I am predominantly a female coach, and female health is something that I'm experienced in myself. I also, as I say, have experienced some of these things myself, so try to help women avoid these mistakes so that they can get to their goals quicker, you know, than what it took me or what it's taken me. It's just something that's really important, as I say, and it's very common that I see with a lot of my clients that I've seen over the years, that people just feel like they're weak and pathetic and they can't do it, and you know, then that just stops them from actually getting to where they want to be, because they just tell themselves they can't do it. Whereas this knowledge really does help you to actually, do you know what, I can do it. If I manage things correctly with a little bit of plan and a little bit of help with this knowledge, it's definitely possible. So yeah, any questions on this, please pop them below. I'll pop the link as well below for my one-to-one online coaching. If this is something that you would like more help and assistance with, I would absolutely love to help you. As I say, I'm very passionate about this. And any other videos, as I say, that would be helpful around this, that you'd maybe want us to go into a bit more detail, then pop that below, and I'd be more than happy to do that. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully it makes sense. Hopefully there's some helpful tips in there, some stuff for you to think about anyway, a little bit of food for thought. And yes, I will see you on the next one.